Greetings, everybody. I'm Norbert Voelkel. I'm a practicing artist, and during my day job time, I am working as a lung doctor, pulmonologist in critical care. I have spent as an attending probably 20 years in the intensive care unit, taking care of patients with respiratory failure. And against this background, you may imagine that I am very much in my thoughts with my colleagues in pulmonary medicine that are taking care of patients with COVID. This exhibition is a bit different from what you might expect. It is an installation and at the same time a tutorial. Tutorial means that I'm going to explain to you a few things about this virus, and then we will look at the paintings and some of the other items in this exhibition that reflect on the aesthetics of this virus. You all see it on television every day in all its beauty and its horror. And so let's get started with some of the issues that you might want to learn. Up here, this image is an electromicrograph. That means that that is what the virus actually looks like under the electron microscope. And then here we have one of many models that show the different proteins of that virus in different colors. And here in pink, and you will see this over the show, are the so-called spike proteins. The spike proteins are important because they are making contact with the cells and then have a chance after they dock with a receptor to enter the cell, infect the cell, and replicate. Down here is a so-called cell culture. These are multiple cells, and all of the cells that are red are infected with the virus. Here is another important part of that life cycle of the virus, because the virus does not have to just get into the cell to replicate, but it also has to exit the cell, and that is accomplished with a lysosome. The green membrane shows you this like a container, a bubble, and all of these different structures are individual virus particles. As you all know, this pandemic has become a political problem, particularly in the United States. And I put up here in this poster an editorial by the reputable New England Journal of Medicine. And that is the first time ever in its 135-year history that this journal has taken a position in an editorial and been extremely critical about the way the pandemic has been handled in this country. And the article has a caption that says, "Dying in a leadership vacuum." Over there from the New York Times, a headline, "President Trump received a single infusion of a promising experimental virus treatment, an antibody cocktail, multiple, developed by Regeneron." That was published on October 2nd, and 10 days later, the president gets in front of the cameras and shouts, "COVID, COVID, COVID, all I hear is COVID." And the problem is that we have a problem and that it will not go away rather soon. This is a graph that shows that there is also infection in children. And over here on this panel, I show you what the problem is and what the patients are dying from. They are dying from the virus attacking the lung. And this is a CT scan, computer tomography scan. And here in these false colors, you see in different colors the blood flow through the lung. And everything here that is blue is basically not perfused, meaning there is no blood going through. and that causes increasing damage to the gas exchange apparatus of the lung. Patients need to be intubated, ventilated, and they die from this problem in the lung. We do have animal models to study that infection in the mouse, in hamsters, in monkeys. And here I'm just showing you very quickly the issue of the antibodies. This is the spike protein blown up, and these are different sites where the antibodies can bind to that spike and cover it up like glue or like a varnish, and so then the spike protein cannot bind to the cell and cannot enter the cell. And that is what the antibodies look like. They look like Ys. This is the specific part, this is a non-specific part of the protein, and here you can see how these Ys can attack and can bind to the virus particle and neutralize its action. And instead of having antibodies, there is a company in California that has developed small proteins called mini binders. And you can see here, again, this is the virus, this is the spike protein, how these binder proteins are binding to the spike protein, preventing it then from entering into the cell. I now take you to the center of the gallery, the center of the Bareiss gallery, which is like at the same time also the center of the problem. And the problem is the President of the United States, Donald Trump. I made that piece in 2017. The title is The Book of Trump. And at a time when we did not anticipate that we would have a pandemic and a problem of the magnitude that we have right now, where in 2 days or so we will have reached the date when 300,000 Americans will have died from this virus infection. This is a political statement that depicts some of the problems that this president has, continue to have, and on one of the pages you can see that I'm riffing on his name to Trump, what that all implies, and you can see that these are all attributes that have been proven true and problematic since he started office. This part of the installation is an assemblage starting on the left side with the death scroll, which represents the number of patients that have died from this virus infection in the state of New Mexico. And each of the patients is represented by a number. And although the number ends at 1,856, unfortunately, we have to project that there will be more people dying in the coming weeks and months. After that, you see several models of the virus showing the spike protein again, and I can tell you that these proteins can move and can retract and can stick out, and that is part of the business of the virus. It can protect itself from being destroyed by cells. We have two more models of the virus. One is a ball that I borrowed from my granddaughter, and the other one is constructed with gummy bears. And then at the far right end, you see a three-dimensional model of a cell membrane. All of these spikes sticking out are part of a cell membrane, and you can see also receptors sticking out. The blue structure represents the angiotensin converting 2 enzyme, which is the receptor that the spike protein binds to. I next take you to this painting, and with the painting into the intensive care unit, you see a patient. He is ventilated. You can see the ventilator tubing sticking up, and there's an infusion bottle, and on the nightstand is an iPhone shows you the title of the painting, which is The iPhone Goodbye. Here I'm channeling the Canadian-born American artist Philip Guston, who started out as an abstract expressionist and then switched to figurative painting. And characteristic for his work are figures with this strange pink against a black background. And then you see a bronze sculpture in front of that painting, which I had made, that had been casted by my friend Huberto Mestas about 20 years ago. And the title of that is Proning, because that is one of the maneuvers that physicians and nurses are using in the intensive care unit to improve the lung function of patients with lung damage. And so that is the reason why that figure is on its belly. And then the third part of that triad is an image of a patient who, you can see it yourself, think about it, probably has passed away. Here I'm introducing you to pieces of my sketchbook, healthcare providers, the nurses and doctors, starting with the ER doctor, then getting to the ICU doctor, ICU nurse, ICU attending, then the image of a COVID patient on fire, a grieving relative, the image of a ICU nurse after she has been on the job for 12 hours, and then there's somebody who is trying to put this all together, staring into the space and hopefully seeing the future. And this here shows you what the virus does to the cells. It invades the cells, it will replicate, and will break out of the cells, infect other cells, and so that is the level of disease on a cellular or tissue level. These are statements that are part of that installation that hopefully are providing context for the show, starting with binaries and then going to the issue of likes, and finally the virus is replicating our greatest fears about ourselves. Next, I'm showing you here a painting entitled Contact, the Attack of the Death Star, clearly an allusion to Star Wars, and again shows you the image of the virus with the spike proteins, and then in these different kind of colors, the surface receptor on the cells, and how the virus binds to that surface receptor before it enters the cell. And then going to the left, you see an advertisement from the Taos News that makes it very clear that this virus kills. And then a little bit regarding masks. A mask that has been used in recent weeks, and then next to it a mask that is from South Korea that is made out of wood and has been in the Korean tradition used when a citizen was approaching the emperor and trying to field a complaint, and in order not to be punished, the face was hidden behind a mask like that. And then on the other side is a fertility dance mask from Colombia that illustrates that masks have been in use for centuries in different cultures, and so it shouldn't be too unusual for citizens to wear masks right now. And that sequence is concluded with a painting that has the title A Bouquet of COVID Flowers. This is the title image for the entire exhibition, The Face of COVID. And you can appreciate that the lungs are sick, inflamed, and very red. And this is oil stick on board, a very immediate technique. That is followed by grief. Again, oil stick on board with rather crude, almost abstract elements. The next is entitled Stop Texting, Talk to Me. And lastly, a sequel to grief, and this has the title of Sorrow. Again, it's the same technique of oil stick on board. And then we have another few statements, starting with the one that, as a physician, hits me particularly hard when people talk about the invisible danger made visible by the disaster scholars. And so at this point I have to identify myself as a disaster scholar. And then there are statements that are also part of our time. Because you can change, I'm unfriending you. The problem that we have, that many people don't believe in science, but so the question, do you believe in gravity? And we can't afford cynicism because we are so fractured. The misspellings are deliberate. And finally, take care of yourself. No one is going to come to rescue you. The next part of the installation takes you to Pandora's box that has flung open and spills out some of the nasty aspects of that pandemic. Cancelled you are, that is expressed in the language of Yoda, and a statement that says refusing to wear a mask is today's equivalent of drunken driving. Collectively, this year, the refusal to wear a mask will kill far more Americans than driving under the influence. And the next image shows you how we have been kicking down the road the virus, and only today, as the vaccines are being delivered, is there a view of the future without kicking down the virus. Then there are two images again of the virus. Actually, the ring structure is stylized after the late Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She had something like that around her neck, and then you have the crazy figures' heads, all looking like viruses, like a virus conference. And then I show you an image to give you an idea about the mutation problem. This is the COVID chair with mutating spike protein genes. Each of these structures is a protein, a different kind of spike. On the styrofoam piece, you can see the genes as they are lined up one after the other, and at the end of this process of mutations, you have different kind of proteins that may generate resistance to treatment, to vaccination, and to antibodies. The next sequence shows you another model of the virus, different kind of proteins constructing this aesthetically pleasing particle of a virus. And the virus is everywhere, also on the stage of theaters, and the virus is in the hand of Buddha. And the next poster shows you some of the aspects of this pandemic. On the left upper field, a cartoon from the 1918 influenza pandemic, sneeze but don't scatter. Then how commercial masks have been distributed, advertisement for chewable Clorox recommended by Donald Trump, and then finally the image of America on life support and coffins stacked high containing victims of the virus. Finally, an illustration of what happens when you not wear a mask. This is not even a super spreader, and in reality, the particles that are expelled from the nose and the mouth travel actually quite a bit greater distances than shown here on that image. This picture, again in the language of Yoda, is entitled "Divided We Are," showing you these two figures, and the one on the left has a beak that is an allusion to the masks that was worn by the plague doctors in the medieval times. And this line here is separating these two people. And then ending up on a positive note, this image is entitled Transcending the Plague, and transcension is symbolized with this figure moving upwards, and you can still see here the traces of the COVID that are all over that person, marking it probably for a very long time. But the meaning is that we are going to overcome this pandemic and move on.